I'm Dr. Ryan DeBell from The Movement Fix. This is Movement Fix Monday. What I want to talk to you about in this video is the basic anatomy of stretching the hamstrings. There's essentially 4 different muscles that make up the hamstrings, and then there's a 5th, which is part of this muscle called the adductor magnus. But we're just going to stick with the main 4. And 3 out of 4 of those muscles, they start their initial attachment on this bone right here, called your ischial tuberosity. And some people call it your sits bones because it's when you sit on like a hard chair or whatever, you feel pressure on there. Anyways, so 3 out of the 4, they start right here. And there's a couple tendons, but for the purposes of what we're talking about, they start right here. And then they travel down the leg and they cross the knee joint. So they cross multiple joints, and that's an important thing about the hamstrings. They cross the hip and the knee joint. So they start up here, and then 2 of them go over on the outside, 2 of them go over on the inside and cross the knee joint. Now I said that 3 out of 4 start here. The 4th one starts like the mid or upper part of your thigh, and it just crosses the knee joint. So that one does not cross also the hip joint, and that's an important thing to note. So what's the implication of this attachment? If you think about starting, let's think about it like a deadlift. Imagine you were deadlifting and you had the muscle like this. If you keep your back flat, you'll see that as you go down into the deadlift, it puts tension into the hamstrings. Now, if you round your back, it takes this attachment point and it lowers it like this, which essentially takes tension off of your hamstrings. So in a deadlift, for example, there's this fight that goes on between the ability of the muscles around your spine to keep it in this neutral lordosis. And so if you were to go like this, these muscles here of the low back have to be able to hold tension against the ischial tuberosity going up like this and tensing the hamstrings. Now, if you round your back, you go off tension. If you overarch your low back, you overly stretch your hamstrings. So some people they do deadlifts and they're overstretching their hamstrings every single rep. And there's a thing called the length-tension relationship. Muscles contract best when they're held at a certain length compared to being either longer or shorter. So if you hold neutral, you actually have potentially better hamstring length for force production. So that's an implication with deadlifting. And you can see if you kept your knees locked, so let's go down here for a sec so I can grab this. So let's say your knees were locked. That's going to stretch your hamstring more, and if you bent your knees, that's going to take tension off. So if you do a straight leg or a stiff-legged deadlift, it's more hamstring tension. If you do a more conventional deadlift, then it's less. So think about it like this. Here I am, here I am. If I go like this, more tension. If I bend my knee, you see how that slacks the hamstring. Now that also has an implication for squatting. People say, oh, my hamstrings, the tightness creates a butt wink or the back rounding and squatting. And that's just not true, because if you think about the attachment point, if you're going down into a squat, you're bending your knee and that's taking the hamstrings off of tension, so they're not tight and pulling your pelvis into that back rounded position. So that's kind of the attachment points, how it applies to certain lifts. But what about stretching? So let's do this common stretch. Right, very common stretch that people do. They kick their leg up onto something like this, and they round forward. Now, if your low back rounds, we just talked about how the ischial tuberosity goes like this. So if you can imagine what's happening under the skin, and that's going to slack the hamstrings. So that's no different than just being here. Your leg goes up, and then you round your back. So it's going to do the same thing as just rounding your back in a deadlift. You're not going to be stretching the hamstrings. So that's why it's so important to keep your back flat or neutral when you're trying to work on your hamstrings or when you're deadlifting, because of the effect that it has. Now, another thing that you can do in a stretch that I'll commonly do is I'll lay on my back, I'll take my hip up into hip flexion, which predisposes the tension from the ischial tuberosity here, because this would be less tension, this is more tension. And then because those muscles also attach across the knee, you can lay here and do this actively. And you can see how now what I'm doing is I'm using my own quads to fight my hamstrings as they cross the knee. Now you could imagine if I were to round my back like this, I'm gonna be able to go farther, but only because I'm taking my ischial tuberosity from being here and taking it there, which is untightening the hamstring. So keeping your back neutral will get you less far, but you're gonna run into the hamstrings sooner. So that would be, this is a way where you start predisposition here and then go at the knee, and then the standing one, or a deadlift, especially a stiff-legged deadlift, is more like your knees are already set and then you're just moving at the hip. But that's the basic anatomy of stretching the hamstrings. If you wanted to look at adductor magnus, that's a future video, so make sure to watch out for that. If you don't already follow The Movement Fix on Instagram, you can find me at The Movement Fix. Make sure to check out my workshops at themovementfix.com/workshops to come to a live event. I'll see you guys next week.